Tonight on EIV News at 6, a look at the terror attacks in Brussels earlier this week.
And we take a look at the newly renovated Government Center Station here in Boston.
Good evening and welcome to EIV News at 6. I'm Maddie Crichton.
And I'm Peyton Lewis. We begin with tonight's top stories. Tragedy struck Europe this week as terrorist attacks in Brussels left 34 dead and hundreds injured. Tuesday morning, bombs exploded at the city's busy international airport and at Malbec metro station. 3 blasts, including 2 suicide bombers, struck the airport around 8 a.m. local time. Roughly a half hour later, another suicide bomber detonated his vest on a subway train during rush hour. Belgian authorities have released the photographs of 3 suspects believed to have been responsible for the airport attacks and a photograph of one of the 2 involved in the metro blast. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for this deadly attack. This attack in Brussels is not an isolated incident and is considered part of a recent spike in terrorist attacks in Europe. And we go now to international correspondent Christina Gesford for more information. Christina?
That's right. To clarify, authorities have been looking for 5 total suspects. 3 are dead and 2 others have not yet been found. A Belgian federal prosecutor says authorities have uncovered an apparent hideout in a Brussels suburb containing 33 pounds of the explosive TATP, screws, and other bomb-making materials. So it's become a new normal for Europe to expect terror alerts and for cities so far spared to anticipate violence. In just over a year, 3 European capitals have been ravaged by bombs and gunfire: Paris, Copenhagen, and now Brussels. Europe is still reeling from the November attacks by Islamic militants in Paris that killed 130 people. British Prime Minister David Cameron says that Britain's threat level remains severe, meaning an attack is considered highly likely. French President François Hollande says the Brussels attack targeted all of Europe and warns of a long war ahead.
Christina, what do you think this means for international security going forward?
Well, I think this sparks a discussion about the current refugee crisis in Europe. Western Europe has had to deal with these threats of violence from Muslim extremists for decades, but it's really hard to imagine that there could be a war playing out in their streets. I think there's really only so much officials can do without taking away civil liberties, though.
This tragedy is, of course, affecting us here in America as well. Among the victims of Tuesday's attacks were several Americans, including a group of Mormon missionaries and military personnel. An Air Force lieutenant colonel and 5 members of his family were injured in the airport explosions. Military officials are currently working to ensure the safety and the well-being of the wounded family. 3 missionaries from the Church of Latter-day Saints were also harmed in the attack and have sustained injuries. One of these missionaries, Mason Wells, was also in France during the November attacks on Paris. All wounded Americans are expected to make full recoveries from their injuries. We go now to political correspondent Annie Carroll to tell us a little bit more about how U.S. lawmakers are responding to the tragedy.
That's right, Maddie. GOP lawmakers were quick to criticize Obama on Tuesday after his call of solidarity with Belgium, stating the president has not done enough to combat ISIS. Both of Obama's toughest critics, Senator John McCain and Lindsey Graham, released a statement saying the attacks were, quote, sadly predictable, and believe the administration has no feasible strategy to destroy ISIS anytime soon. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes has claimed the attacks were not surprised, since the intelligence world has given off many warnings. Democrats have defended Obama's counterterrorism policies, but all agree in the wake of the Brussels attacks that Congress should take steps increasing transit security domestically. And in election news, presidential candidate Ted Cruz called for higher surveillance of Muslim neighborhoods in the U.S. Following the deadly terrorist attacks in Brussels, Cruz believes increasing the police presence in Muslim neighborhoods will decrease the likelihood of becoming radicalized. He praised the NYPD program that secured Muslim neighborhoods and said it is a potential model for nationwide police departments. Both Senator Bernie Sanders and Governor John Kasich disagree with Cruz's call for heightened domestic surveillance of Muslims, while Donald Trump agrees with his measurement. The Anti-Defamation League also denounced Cruz's proposal and said that demonizing all Muslims is a counterproductive response to terrorism. Cruz's call to action is just short of Trump's proposal to ban all Muslims from coming into the U.S. I'll be back a little bit later with Western Tuesday results, but for now, back to Maddie and Peyton at the desk.
Thanks so much, Annie. We're going to be taking a quick break right now, but when we get back, we'll hear from Ana Beatriz Gonçalves from the newly renovated Government Center Station. Stay with us.
Welcome back to EIV News at 6. We now go to Ana Beatriz Gonçalves, who joins us from Government Center Station. How are the new renovations, Ana Beatriz?
Well, guys, everyone I've talked to seems to love the new station. Its glass structure lets in a lot of natural light, and it's completely accessible. We asked some commuters their thoughts on how the new station looks.
First time using it, I came in to look around, but I actually haven't used it yet. I'm excited to try it.
Much, yeah. I've been waiting for it to open, and it's finally open. It's great.
I think it's pretty. It's beautiful, yeah. There's lots of natural light.
Yeah, with the lights and everything.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
I really love it. It's really modern with all the glass, and yeah, it looks really nice.
For 2 years, the Green and Blue Line station was closed, and riders were forced to use other stations.
Getting off at Haymarket and then walking, or getting off at Park Street and walking. It's really convenient, and I mean, it only took 3 years, right?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. The new station also includes sprayers which are undergoing tests. The MBTA hopes the sprayers will mitigate screeching while Green Line trains turn corners, according to spokesman Joe Pasaturo.
Generally, you hear a lot in the Green Line. It's pretty common with it.
Especially in Boylston. That's the worst part, yeah.
It's
That's
really
so
loud.
loud. Sometimes it's really, really bad, but
Sometimes when I'm on the phone, it's like so annoying because I'm like, hold on, the train's gonna screech.
The MBTA says sprayers are being tested at Government Center only, and there are not yet plans to expand their use.
It's a nuisance that depending on how much money it costs. I'm not sure if it's crazy expensive, but it is a nuisance that would be greatly appreciated.
The MBTA is still working out some issues with the sprayers, but when they're working, the screeching is definitely quieter. For EIV News, I'm Ana Beatriz Gonçalves.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ana Beatriz. In other news, President Obama made history this week when he became the first president to visit Cuba since Calvin Coolidge in 1928. The president addressed a crowd in Havana on Tuesday, stating that he was there to, quote, bury the remnants of the Cold War in the Americas. The president told the crowd that the future of the nation rests in the hands of its people rather than in the hands of the United States. His remarks have sparked discussion about leadership and democracy in this nation, which until recently had cut diplomatic ties with the U.S. The president had also attended a baseball game with his family where he sat alongside Cuba's president, Raul Castro.
And the Supreme Court is currently divided on the controversy surrounding payment for women's birth control under faith-based healthcare plans. After 90 minutes of discussion, the court is headed for a 4-4 ruling after Justice Antonin Scalia's passing. Under the current plan, preventative services must be provided at no extra cost. Thousands of women would be disadvantaged by a ruling for aforementioned religious groups. The court is also taking into consideration the Religious Freedom Law, which ensures that religious freedoms are protected. In a statement released by General Donald Verrilli, groups would not be fined for not abiding by the law. And things are heating up as some western states took to the polls earlier this week in the race for the White House. We go back to Annie Carroll for an update. Annie?
That's right, Maddie. On Western Tuesday, voters hit the polls in Arizona, Utah, and Idaho as presidential candidates fought to convince voters that they can protect the nation against terrorism. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton won in Tuesday's biggest states of Arizona, while Senator Bernie Sanders took caucuses in Utah and Idaho. Ted Cruz was victorious in the second GOP state, Utah. Sanders and Cruz's victories have hindered the frontrunners' chances of dominating yet another primary election. However, both Clinton and Trump still hold a strong lead in delegate numbers. In other 2016 election news, former Florida governor and presidential candidate Jeb Bush endorsed Ted Cruz via Twitter. Bush stated, quote, Ted is a consistent, principled conservative who has shown he can unite the party. Bush also warned Republicans that Trump's vulgarity could lead to a loss to Clinton.
And President Obama is still making waves, journeying to Argentina after his much talked about Cuba trip earlier this week. International correspondent Christina Gesford has more on that right now.
That's right, Peyton. President Barack Obama arrived in Buenos Aires early Wednesday morning for his meeting with new Argentine President Mauricio Macri. Obama hopes to strengthen economic and political ties with Latin America and its conservative president. However, he is destined to face mass anti-American protests from regular Argentines. The visit occurred on the 40th anniversary of the 1976 military coup that the U.S. initially supported. Resentment for the loss of over tens of thousands of lives during the military dictatorship still lingers in the country. During the two-day visit, Obama plans to address questions about America's role in what many see as a shameful U.S. history of backing repressive Latin American regimes. Obama's administration plans to announce plans to declassify secret intelligence and military documents from the period to potentially shed more light on a story left mostly untold. And in other news, Syria government forces seized high ground around Palmyra on Wednesday, positioning themselves to recapture the town held by the Islamic State group. The UNESCO World Heritage Site has been in the hands of the Islamic State group since last May, when the extremists blew up priceless Roman-era relics and other archaeological treasures. The push on Palmyra started last week and was backed by intense Russian airstrikes. The Homs governor says he expects positive results in the next few days.
Thank you, Christina. Stay tuned after the break for your March Madness update with Hannah Miller. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to EIV News at 6. We turn now to some news out of Utah. A 6-year-old girl was removed from her foster home on Wednesday when her foster family lost their custody battle with the Native American Choctaw tribe. The girl, Alexandria, has lived with her foster family for 4 years. She was removed from the care of her mother as a baby. Since her father is a member of the Choctaw tribe, Alexandria is also considered to be Native American under the 1978 Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. Alexandria will be sent to live with her relatives in Utah, though her foster family has filed a request for stay.
And across the country and in Connecticut, doctors at Yale New Haven Hospital are being sued for reportedly removing the wrong body part during surgery and then attempting to cover up the mistake. 60-year-old patient Deborah Craven was supposed to have part of her 8th rib removed last year due to a cancerous lesion. Instead, doctors mistakenly removed part of her 7th rib. After complaints of pain from Craven, the doctors attempted to conceal the issue by stating that the rib had not been completely removed and a second surgery would be necessary. The lawsuit includes the fact that the correct rib had been marked by dye and metal coils, therefore the doctors should have known which rib to operate on.
Ooh, that sounds scary.
That is a rough one, yeah.
Let's throw it now to Hannah Miller with a look at what's been going on in sports this week. Hannah?
Thanks, Peyton. This week, the Tampa Bay Rays traveled to Cuba to play the national team there. This was the first Major League Baseball game played in Cuba in 17 years. It was the second time an MLB team has traveled to Cuba since 1959. Not only was this a remarkable day for sports, but also for the United States. Our president and his family traveled to Cuba for the game, marking the first time a United States president has traveled to Cuba in 88 years. Former New York Yankee Derek Jeter was also present, seen conversing with our president and Fidel Castro's brother in the seat next to President Obama. The Rays came out on top of the national team, and the MLB is working on ways for these players to join the MLB without having to flee their country. After a crazy start to March Madness, we are down to 16 teams. The next round starts tonight at 7:10 with Villanova and Miami facing off. Villanova struggled a little in the first 2 rounds, while Miami took Wichita State out of the tournament in the second round. The second game of the night, Oklahoma and Texas, will kick off at 7:37. Kansas will take on Maryland after the Jayhawks dominated Connecticut. Maryland will be the Jayhawks' first real competition in the tournament so far. The final game of the night will be Duke and Oregon at 10:07. The Ducks struggled against St. Joseph's but pulled out the win, so we'll have to wait and see if they can do it again. 20 years after former New York Governor George Pataki banned the sport, MMA is almost legal in New York. It was put to a vote on Tuesday, with the sport coming out on top 113 to 25 votes. There were additional precautions added to the sport to boost support. The insurance required for fighter injuries was raised to $50,000 and to $1 million for life-threatening injuries to the brain. There's also a required insurance of $50,000 for the estate of an athlete that is fatally injured. The only thing left to complete the legalization is Governor Cuomo signing the bill and the New York Athletic Commission finalizing the rules. That's all I have for you tonight. Now back to Peyton and Maddie at the desk.
Thanks, Hannah. Authorities had to go out on a limb, literally, to try and rescue a man who climbed downtown Seattle's iconic 80-foot sequoia tree Tuesday afternoon and refused to come down. The man was described by police as agitated and hurled branches, apples, and other debris at responding emergency workers. The bizarre hours-long standoff, of course, went viral, spawning the hashtag #ManInTree, with interneters responding in typical fashion, saying the man was waiting longer than voters in Arizona and the ordeal was outlasting some of their longest relationships. this. And if it wasn't surreal enough, famed internet cosplayer Phoenix Jones got involved, claiming to know the man and offering to act as a negotiator in his superhero costume. Police continuously tweeted updates saying the issue just seemed to be between the man and the tree. The man has since climbed down from the tree and is undergoing a psych evaluation.
Wow, that sounds like a crazy day, huh?
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty busy day in Seattle for sure.
Other news that was national. It was National Puppy Day yesterday. Not sure if you saw that on Instagram.
I did see that on Instagram. It's the best thing is just scroll down, dog,
double
dog,
tap, double tap.
Yeah, I love seeing people's dogs. But that's all the time we have for you today. Thanks for watching EIV News at 6. I'm Maddie Crichton.
And I'm Peyton Lewis. Good night.